Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HMP. The countdown is on, and this week we're talking about Automan. I am your host, Adam Portress, and joining me today, like Automan himself, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's an 11. Please welcome the Hartford Hellion, sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
Now, Cursor, stop being a sex pest and leave that lady alone.
Oh, you let him just do what he do. He just, he his own little guy and stuff like that. You try to take Cursor to HR. See if that works out for you. It ain't gonna, because that Cursor just do what Cursor gonna do. Today we're talking about Automan, everybody. Have you never heard of Automan before? You're probably like a lot of folks. This thing came out in 1983, and Sean, what put us on this selection this week?
This is one of the things that I always wanted to see, that I always wanted to review on our dumb podcast, because it was one of these shows where when I was a kid, it was the greatest show in the world, and I can't believe that they canceled it. It was one of those shows. Like I don't know if that happens very often to people now. Like I know that Netflix pulls shows early, but I can remember distinctly being a kid, like being like a kid too, not an older kid, and being so upset that they canceled Automan, which was my favorite show at the time in 1983, and with good reason. I mean, you've seen the two episodes, you've seen the pilot episode and the second episode. You know why now. I mean, I can't believe that we made more TV shows after this.
Yeah, exactly. Once you've reached the pinnacle of television, do you go further or do you just stop?
I keep going. Exactly.
You've reached the zenith. There's no further for you to go. But was Manimal before or after this?
I believe that it's after, but I don't know entirely.
Now, listen, I know you guys have been crapping on our Automan, and I got to admit to you, there were portions of the show that could have been better. I'm not going to lie to you. But if you listen to this, now, I know we have the idea of animal, but what if we took a man and an animal and put it together and we called it Manimal? Mm-hmm. And somebody said, we laughed at Automan. We said this was a terrible idea, but yet you put 13 episodes out. But I feel like this Manimal, I feel like that's going to be the way of the future. Put them on. No, and then you got that Street Hawk. Are these all the same people that do all these shows, or is it kind of like
well, you've hipped into it here. Is that everybody knows everybody who was alive during this time knows the name Stephen J. Cannell.
Oh yeah,
because he made the A-Team, and he has like a very specific ending to his shows. But there was also another guy, and that guy's name is Glenn A. Larson. And Glenn A. Larson is responsible, like he's the producer and the creator and the head writer of just about every TV show from the 80s. Like he's Magnum PI, he's Battlestar Galactica, he's the Fall Guy, he's so many different things,
which I thought was wildly awesomely serendipitous this week, because the new Fall Guy movie with Ryan Gosling is out in theaters this weekend. Originally produced,
we did that on purpose.
Yeah,
totally done on purpose.
Totally on purpose.
And it's he's one of these guys who basically ruled television in the 80s. Him and Stephen J. Cannell and maybe like a handful of others, but Glenn A. Larson's stuff. Like there's no way, if you're an American, you have no idea what, or even in an English speaking country, that you've never seen any of his stuff, because it was just so prevalent everywhere. And so like, while he's doing Automan, I think Knight Rider comes after, but like, he did Knight Rider, and he's like the A-Team, and like I think the A-Team is Stephen J. Cannell, but like that's how much he did on television. And so it's just all mixed up in my head. I'm literally going to his IMDb vamping as I'm talking to you, because I don't want to screw it up. And he's, like he did the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century show. He is, if you saw a picture of him, you'd be like, yep, that guy's a producer for television. He's out of central casting. He looks like that guy. And he's, we'll get into it later. I don't want to keep going.
Oh yeah.
Because but like even now, he's still, like all of these shows like Hawaii Five-0 and Magnum PI and like all of these things that have reemerged. Like,
Yeah.
there's a new version of these things. He's making all that money because he's the creator of these shows.
Man, I'm like, yeah, I'd like to sell you Magnum PI 2.0. Sure. Will you sign this here check? And they go, yeah.
I mean,
And
there's
like,
96 episodes of the new Magnum PI. As hard as that is to believe, there are currently 96 episodes of that show.
Sheesh.
He gets paid for every single one of those episodes.
That's good, and that's going to go into syndication then at that point, and then just kind of be like your CSIs or your NCISs, where you can travel around on any deep cable station and see any of those episodes 24/7, 365.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just describing how my parents watch television. But quite frank, boomers will not let go of that. Though they just won't. They're just like, nope, mom, we're dying on that hill, and there's part of me that kind of respects that. Before we get the Automan, though, we do want to say thank you to people who support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those people get pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. We talking about the future of HMP here in the Dinger Zone and stuff like that, and you guys are helping shape that future and everything. So if you'd like to do that, help this program, keep us on that train just a chugging, head on over to patreon.com/HMP. Boy, I'm really glad I hit that HMP when I did that. It's just kind of worked out right for us in a lot of ways,
Huh?
Yeah, I don't know. If that statement confuses you, patreon.com/HMP. That's how you sell them, everybody. And if you can't do that, just drop over to the iTunes, give us a 5-star review, aka Humdinger. Or email us, anything of those things. All the links for everything that we do are always in the show notes and stuff like that. And again, we just want to thank you guys ahead of time before we get to the end of the show. Well, we always thank you at the end of the show. Let's thank you a little bit hard up here at the front of the show. Thank you. We love you. We appreciate all of you and for sharing this show and telling everybody, man, we really like it. Awesome. All right, let's get into it. Here is the IMDb plotline for Automan. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. A computer-generated superhero and his human creator fight crime in the city. Well,
nailed it.
Yes, that is correct. This is created, as we mentioned, by Glenn A. Larson. A lot of fun stuff from him in the past. But let me sell everybody on this Tron ripoff because this sucker's got everything. We start with neon lettering that says Automan, while we see a man also with neon blue sparks of light all over his body as he touches his fist to his wrist as the keyboards that, I kid you not, would go on to score Kids Incorporated swells in the background with lasers, zips, and zops everywhere. Just then, the close-up of a man who looks like he's enjoying a bit of a humdinger, if you know what I mean, and I'm sure that you do, and we're only 7 seconds into this show. We've got little Ricky himself, Desi Arnez Jr. Bumalo! We got Chuck Wagner, who was also in Into the Woods. Not that one, but I would have loved to see him in that one. We got Robert Stark cosplay. We've got several great value Heather Locklears going on. That's fun. Not sure what this show is about. Check out the 5-minute intro on every episode. The Teletubbies were like, write that down. We got Dayglow tape, a Lamborghini Countach, a helicopter. What if R2-D2 was a ball of light that flew around and checked out ladies' bosoms? Well, we got that. We got a lack of understanding of technology, a ton of great bad cover songs. Sid Haig and Mickey Jones make cameos. We got Flashdance Saturday Night Fever references, glowing blue everywhere, and a show with computers that has exactly 0 computer effects. A recipe for success, says I. This show's got everything.
Yeah, man. I think that, well, I know that I told you earlier when we were not on the main show that after watching these 2 episodes, and by the way, again, you're welcome. I was like, wow, I don't really have a ton to say about the show because the formula of the show is so simplistic that it's like it's like a child's cartoon show, which I think is the whole point of this. But so I watched a documentary on it, and that documentary is like, it was done in 2012, and it's probably like 25 minutes long, and there is a ton to talk about the documentary. But if you want to, we should probably first talk about the TV show.
Yeah, let's get to the
show. And Adam is not lying when he says, if you don't know what the show is about, just go to any random episode. You will be completely and utterly filled in like it is an episode of Gilligan's Island, only it's not a catchy song that tells you what happens.
There's no rhyme.
It's literally 5 minutes long. And then on to pile on top of that, they have that 5 minute opening. And in the pilot episode, then you get to see what he just talked about for the entire first episode.
Yeah.
So what he explains in 5 minutes is explained in 45 minutes after the first 5 minutes are done of the pilot episode of Automan. And again, totally worth it. Best show ever. Can't believe we still made TV shows after this. But it is one of those things where the people writing don't understand what computers really are. They're like the sergeant of the show, where they're calling things keyboards and typewriters and like, and I do have to say there are certain moments where they're doing a good job explaining to an audience who might not be familiar, like might not be that tech savvy.
It's 1983,
like,
you know,
like what a hologram is. Like I'm sure in 1983, not all of America had heard the word hologram.
Yeah, it's a little foreign.
It wouldn't be until 2 or 3 years later where we would be introduced to Gem and the holograms, and then everyone would know. But
now I get that show on CBS. So long, so many of these years, I'm like hologram. I know I watched that 5 minute explanation every episode of Automan, but I'm still not quite grasping it. And then when I see Jim and the holograms, it all falls into place.
It's and Desi Arnez Jr., who spent his entire life in front of the camera, he looks so uncomfortable in this show. He probably really enjoyed being on the show because he was one of the two leads, but he looks like he doesn't really know what to do when he's not speaking. You know, he's almost like a Simpson character when a Simpsons character isn't speaking.
Yeah, just kind of like blip, blip, like you're lucky if you get a little blink of the eyes, like the early animation days where like they just didn't quite always think about everybody in the background, and it's just somebody that's just kind of blinking and standing there until they're called upon.
The only difference is the Simpsons did that on purpose because they were like, you know what, this is a pretty good way to save money, and people aren't looking at the characters who aren't speaking, so we just won't animate it like a Disney cartoon would. And we'll save some money. Whereas Desi Arnaz Jr. is just like, if I ain't talking, I ain't acting.
He looks like so many different people, because obviously you can see Desi when you look at him. You can definitely see that looks there. Like Desi. But he also has. There's also like a little Matthew Broderick in there. There's a little. What was his face? There's a couple other guys. Casey Kasem. He looks a little like Casey Kasem.
A little bit.
And so like there's so many times where I'm looking at him just like you can see Desi Arnaz, but you also see about 15 other people, because he's not quite Desi had the thick Cuban accent there and everything that he obviously, kind of, I'm sure that was a lean in at least a little bit. He
totally leaned into that.
You know what I mean? But he's such a vanilla kind of guy, but I guess that's maybe sort of the point, because he's a computer nerd and everything, and you obviously need Automan to be the cool one.
I haven't seen the other things that Desi Arnaz Jr. is in. So like, I know that he did a ton of guest star appearances on, your Love Boat, your Fantasy Island, like he did all that stuff, but he's also on like the Brady Bunch and things like that. And I never watched any of the things he was on for that. So I don't know if he was supposed to be like America's answer to Davy Jones, maybe, where he's a little guy, but he's like a cute little guy.
I could see people also like him showing up in the show and constantly getting the Desi Arnaz Jr.
Yeah.
One of those kind of things whenever
Yeah.
he shows up as a cameo kind of thing and then tussles a kid's hair and then is off to, wherever.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you a real life question about Desi Arnaz Jr. Do you think he owns Desilu Enterprises?
Oh, no. I'm sure that slipped through his hands somehow.
Do you think?
I don't know.
But basically, I'm wondering, is he? It can't be possible that he's still that their family is making money on Star Trek. That just can't be, right?
So, yeah, it's like CBS probably has to own most of that at this point, I would think.
I would think because I know that it was produced through Desilu, the first show.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they get a little taste of every time somebody makes a Star Trek.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. He's an executive producer on the I Love Lucy 50th anniversary special and the Being the Ricardos that they put out just a couple years ago with
right.
What's her face there?
Yeah, but I mean, he's gonna have his folks' life right.
Yeah, exactly. That was gonna be my point. It's like that's why he's on there. So I don't think he's out producing nothing or maybe he's just collecting a paycheck and doesn't want to put his name on it, which I'd be fine with, if I was.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he has to work. I mean, Jesus, he worked so much as a kid. There's no way he has to keep working.
You think I ain't waking up to mailbox money from I Love Lucy in 1953, you piece of garbage? And then you backhand somebody. That's what I figure he's like, based upon these 2 episodes alone. That's what I put together.
I'm wondering, because here's another thing too, is that when watching the documentary, here we go into the documentary already. Watching this documentary, I noticed something about Desi Arnaz Jr., which is that he is not easily rattled by the fact that this show was canceled. He doesn't heap a ton of praise on it, but he also doesn't belittle it.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying things like, we had a really good time and the cast got along. Like he's saying things like that. Things that only a pro would do in front of a camera. Mm-hmm. Whereas when they're interviewing Automan's like, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It completely changed my life. Like Chuck Wagner cannot be effusive with the praise enough.
No, when you look back on it, it's just like you can just see like it feels like he knows that like this is his big thing.
Yes.
When he's on screen in this.
So here is my thought is that I'm wondering, because there is no way that Glenn A. Larson is not a monster. He is a producer in the 80s of television shows. He had to have been a nightmare.
Cocaine was cheap, people.
I don't know about the cocaine stuff because he does have a Mormon background. That's how he created the Battlestar Galactica.
And maybe even more dangerous. I'm just kidding, Mormon people.
No. I totally think that. I think that you go into Hollywood and you aren't a cokehead in the 80s, you are probably 10 times worse than the biggest cokehead in the world. So like, I mean, that, you know what? I just overstated that. There's no way anyone is crazier than that dude who was dating Barbra Streisand and became a producer. That guy is by far the craziest person in all of Hollywood. He was a hairdresser turned producer. There's no way that guy is the craziest person in the world.
No. You become a completely normal and level-headed person when you go from hairdresser to multi-million-dollar producer. All normal, all regular. Just keep you grounded is what I like to say.
Exactly. But so Glenn A. Larson, there's no way he's not a monster. He is one of the biggest names in Hollywood for television in the 80s. And I'm wondering if Desi Arnaz Jr., having grown up in the business, having legendary parents, I'm wondering if he created a bubble around the cast members where they're not getting killed by this producer. And so the experience probably was really great for Chuck Wagner. It's just they were all being protected by Desi Arnaz Jr. because Desi Arnaz Jr. don't need your money, Glenn A. Larson.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And you're probably right, because at this point, not for nothing, Desi Arnaz Jr. is kind of Hollywood royalty at this point, right? Like this kid, we literally saw him grow up as a child on screen. Like two of the biggest parents in Hollywood, period. he had to go through a whole lot, and so I think you're right. I would bet money on he kind of helped all of this sort of stay afloat and all that kind of good stuff. I think you're right.
would think the part that shocked me about this show is that it cost $1 million an episode to make this show.
It's like, where is this money going?
Well, I mean, it's to the special effects because I can't even imagine the level of artistry that had to go into. I know the effects look ridiculous now, but the level of artistry to make all that work, that had to be so expensive. Like his shirt, that Automan shirt that he has, it's so specific to Automan that even to this day, if I see anything that looks even remotely like that, I'm like, oh, that's just Automan.
Doesn't it make you feel like they took the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern and kind of like took a little inspiration from this? Because it feels very like that, but like green and just kind of glowing and everything, and it's this just weird looking suit. Feels like they.
I guess a little, but I watched this first. I saw Automan first.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, it came later and everything. But let's just how the suit, which I think is actually kind of cool, and I think especially because on YouTube, this is like watching a Claude Monet painting right here.
Man, you're not kidding.
It is so blocky.
This is a copy of a copy of a copy we're watching.
It is. It's so bad.
It had to have been driving you crazy.
I was just like, let me take off my glasses and see if that kind of improves things a little bit. And in an odd way, it kind of did. It's kind of smooths everything out a little bit. You don't see, it's not quite as crisp and clear. And you're just like, I guess we're just kind of a little out of focus, but that's fine. It's still fine. But it feels like they just saw Tron and they were like, we can do that.
Well, that's the whole thing is that, again, to go back to this documentary, is that Glenn A. Larson saw Tron and said, hey, and he was very disappointed in it. He loved the idea of it, but was completely disappointed by it. He's like, let's do Tron, but let's have Tron solve crimes.
The problem is that Tron it's just not hardcore enough, not like kind of street. We want to bring like Hill Street Blues, but to Tron, right?
Well, Hill Street Blues is pretty damn realistic.
Hey,
I don't know if you watched that.
You don't think this is realistic?
No.
What with him,
not at
what
all.
with him punching a couple things into a computer screen, and then a man assimilating out of like thin air into a thing, and we're like, yep, that's computers for you.
I do love this era of fictional writing where I don't understand computers. They're magic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have them behave like everything's magic.
I
especially love that he's like that Automan is kind of like Joe Fixit from the Marvel comic books, where if it's nighttime, it's fine, but during the day, you ain't seeing Automan because people are using way too much power. He requires so much power.
But yeah, people are sleeping now, and the grids are cool, so I can now go out and do what kind of bullcrap is this? No, you want to know why? Because the Dayglow suit in the daytime looks ridiculous.
Well, the reason is because they couldn't figure it out in the first those first like bunch of episodes. They couldn't have it work during the day. The special effects guys are like, this, we cannot make this work. And so later on they were able to do it, like after episode 5, I think it is where they figure it out and they crack the code so he can start walking around during the day. But those first bunch of episodes, they don't know how to do it. They can't figure it out. And so that's why every episode takes place at night, which, by the way, Desi Arnez Jr. totally brings up. He's like, we were on set for 22, 23 hours a day, and we would go start at nighttime and then we would end during the day. And it was brutal. It was brutal. Meanwhile, Chuck Wagner's like, ka-ching, we're on set for 22 hours. And I'm like, Chuck Wagner, Please come down, sir. Please come down.
Chuck's like, oh my God, I'm going to make rent this entire year. Desi's like, I've got a mansion already. I've been living in since I was 4. So I'm doing fine. Chuck's just like, I'm out of the bread line. So I'm super stoked about this.
But like, for your first question from earlier, I don't know if this question was asked on the main show or on the Dinger Zone, but Manimal and Automan came out the same year.
Same year. Okay. Man.
Yeah. Also, both shows completely tanked. As a matter of fact, Automan had more episodes than Manimal did.
It's because people weren't ready for it.
That is one of the things about Glenn A. Larson is that you're right. That is one of the things about Glenn A. Larson is that most of his shows look like something else. So like if you saw something earlier, you're like, hey, that's kind of like this. It's probably a Glenn A. Larson show.
Yeah, if Glenn A. Larson was still kicking it today, he would have already made a Squid Games ripoff and just called it like Octopus Games.
Yes, he totally would have.
And just be like, but it's a different kind of underwater creature. What are you talking about? It's different, completely different.
It's a schlockbuster before Schlockbusters exists.
He's the early TV version of Asylum.
Yes.
I like some of the elements though, and like just the little bit of kind of world building and stuff that they do, like when he's driving the car and everything, and how them taking off and doing like these 90-degree turns and all this stuff. Automan is there and stays completely still and everything, and Desi Arnez Jr. is being flown around in the car like, oh my God, I'm just being tossed left and right here. Little tiny things like that were like, you didn't have to do that, but that's kind of neat and interesting that they were at least attempting to make some sort of a world idea with this.
Well, that's what these are the 3 things I remember as a kid from watching this show. Is 1, his shirt, because it's so specific. 2 is the really cool Lamborghini that they drove around in that had the Dayglow tape on it that could make 90-degree turns. And the 3rd thing is that cursor. At the time, I thought that cursor, he's a ladies' man, but now I see him as a sex pest because times have changed.
It's just like, oh, he's going around getting all the ladies. It's like, no, he's going in and just motorboating girls as far as...
well, that's just for that episode.
Well,
It gets worse. It gets way worse later.
It's worse than that. Because he literally goes by a chick and just and then leaves.
He do,
and we're supposed to be like, I guess that's just a thing. And he almost don't they basically just be like, cursor?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's constantly like, cursor. That's not nice.
Come on now, cut that out, you little scamp. He just do what he do. We can't help it. But he's like R2D2 though. He bloops and bleeps, and Automan's the only one who understands what he's saying.
Yes.
So good.
Is it the second episode where Cursor has to talk to Desi Arnez Jr. and he says, and he's like, I can't understand you. Only Automan can understand you. And so Cursor goes into the computer.
He just jumps straight in.
Speaking through type. Hello, Wally. This is Cursor. Automan wanted me to tell you. It's like, get out of here. Get out of here. Oh, that is the best thing about the show. If there's anything to recommend it, it's that Automan constantly has these asides of other electronic things. So like Desi Arnez is talking about Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and Automan goes, "Oh, I know him. Pac-Man is a good friend of mine." Like completely dead serious.
This is where that like I feel like this is where the influence of like Tron came in and everything, because when you watch Tron and the idea of Tron of like we're going inside this computer and they're racing around and all it's so stupid and silly and just kind of like no idea of what actual computers and stuff are, but an interesting idea of like if you were in your computer, what would that kind of be like? But this is that same kind of thing. You're just like, who cares? It's all just phony and fake and nonsense. And it's like, but I feel like Automan also is kind of being set up. And again, I've only seen these 2 episodes, but I feel like he's also kind of being set up a lot like Greatest American Hero, where like he can have whatever powers we kind of need him to have, because we can upload all of the whatever, the this, that's, and the others, that he can just all of a sudden, like the Matrix, get himself a little bit of kung fu and like, oh, there, okay, all right, I know all these things now. And the best one, of course, being John Travolta's dancing.
Oh my God, that's just amazing.
And how, so I guess there's some sort of, it had to be blue screen back in the 80s, but some sort of blue screen-esque kind of thing where they then go and more or less project, Saturday Night Fever, or a ripoff of Saturday Night Fever, actually starring Chuck Wagner, just projecting that onto his chest in a weird way, and him kind of watching into his own chest of him dancing.
Yeah,
real
that part
strange
is pretty,
and weird, but I love it. It's because it's
that
so
part's
dumb.
pretty strange. Also, that's not the real music, right?
No,
all
that's what's so fun about this show, is that there are rip-off versions, cover versions, but here's the thing, they're not all awful. Like during that specific scene, there was a Bee Gees cover, and it's not the Bee Gees, but darn close enough to where you're like, no, that's not terrible. Same thing goes with like Michael Jackson. There's a Michael Jackson song in there that you're just like, hey, Michael Jackson, but it's close enough to pass. But it's so close enough to pass some of these songs that in YouTube, they have been dropped out.
Yeah, I ran into the same problem, because I was like, oh no, the sound is all screwed up on this. But then I thought better of it and was like, oh, wait a minute, I bet you.
And then shooting the songs over, and then bam, it's right back on. But, and that kind of sucks, especially during that first episode when that happens and everything, because that's when we get the Sid Haig cameo.
Yes.
It's so freaking cool. And Mickey Jones, do you need a biker from the years 1989 to the years 2003? Mickey Jones going to be that guy that's going to be doing that role for you.
His most famous line is in Suburban Commando, where Hulk Hogan says something like, let me guess, you want to rip off my arms and beat me up and blah, 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 blah. And Mickey Jones goes, no, man, it's the 80s. We're going to sue you.
Oh, yeah. We're going to sue you. So good. Hey, he's one of those great character actors that just, when he pops up in something, and obviously we got another great character. He wasn't in any of these two episodes, but of course it was 1980s. So Clu Gulager was going to have a cameo in your show at some point.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was just like, yep, that makes nothing but sense. Old Clu Gulager was in Hollywood at that time. So by God, he was stopping by somebody's television show to give a quick how do you do, and then off to the races.
That's right.
Just what the man does. And like, he'll be missed, man. That guy was just like a legend in Hollywood. And he was, up until like his last days and everything, he was still going to the New Beverly and watching movies and stuff with people, and just would say hi to everybody that would go out there. Yeah, he was just like, he was a real dude all the way to the end, that guy. What do you think about the police captain? What a guy.
Well, he is, first of all, like the most Irish person in the world.
Like casting.
He looks like everybody's dad that I grew up with, that guy. And clearly from New York, can't get rid of that accent.
Mm-hmm.
He's great. It's unfortunate that he's saying, you don't even have to put the sound on and you know what he's saying to Desi Arnez Jr. Like it's never complimentary, because we're during that phase of like I don't like you. You get results, but I don't like you, and you're a nerd, and you're not a real cop, and like all that stuff. And of course, he thinks that Robert Lansing is just the greatest.
Oh yeah,
he's just the best cop in the world, and Lansing seems to be the only cop on the force who thinks that Desi Arnaz Jr. is worth a crap, and takes all of the credit every time Desi Arnaz Jr. and Automan are saving the day. He always gets all the credit. It's so strange.
But at the same time, too, though, at least he's just like, hey, you're trying to give me all this credit. What are you doing? You're trying to ruin me. You're trying to ruin me by giving me all the credit.
Jerk about it.
But he, like, at least that character's fun. I love all the hair in this program as well. It looks like just so many cans of Aquanet died making this program. It's it had to have just been a C. You could not have walked into a trailer and not just breathed in all the carcinogens in the air, because this show is between, and I'm talking guys and girls. It is
Yeah.
just like every perfect 80s hair is just stuck right into place there. So good. But again, that score, I was shocked at how often that like pop songs came up and stuff. Just like even if they're ripoffs, you still got to pay for something there. It's not like even a sound alike where it's like, oh, this kind of sounds like the Monkees. No, it was like a pretty good ripoff version of that. I don't know how all that works.
Yeah, it's like Last Train to Clarksville, but sung by like Davy Jones' brother.
Yeah, exactly. We got his backup singer in here who just puts down the temp track so Davey can then come in and go like, oh, that's all I got to do, and then just does that and leaves, because he's a real artist. He doesn't need to mess around with all the other stuff. You set everything up in advance for Davey. Davey knocks it out of the park, goes home. That's how the man works.
I do have to say, with the soundtrack to this show, I think that if you made this show without all the needle drops, if you like had a Tangerine Dream score, like think of the score from Thief, from the movie Thief.
Yeah.
Like as the underbed track to all of the show. And you could even still keep the main theme song, since it sounds just like it. It sounds like Tangerine Dream in the first place. It's like it would be. I don't know how well that show would do, but it would be the most 80s show ever, because right now, it being 1983 and we're going, we're still doing Saturday Night Fever stuff and things, like it's still the late 70s, even though it's 1983.
Yeah.
Where and you want it to be, you really do want it to be more, at least I did. I wanted it to be way more 80s than it actually was, this show, because it just feels like the late 70s watching it.
Yeah, there's not much difference between any of these, and speaking of which, I read that Chuck Wagner like based his performance off of Shatner in Star Trek.
Yeah, that's what he says. I don't believe him.
Yeah, but I think it's more maybe just kind of the straightforwardness of that kind of thing. I think that's more what he was talking about, because it doesn't sound like he's doing like an impression of Shatner for sure.
No, he doesn't have that Shatner staccato, and also he's putting on that Atlantic voice, that voice that isn't a British accent, but it's not an American accent.
This is
either.
what a computer sounds like.
Yes, he's speaking neutrally, where he's not American or European. It's both things.
And it's kind of weird though, because like he never really seems like he's got like an actual personality. He does seem like a computer program in a weird way, in as much as he doesn't seem to be, there. He just kind of he seems like Chuck's reading the lines. That's all I'm saying. I don't know how much Chuck is acting here. I feel like he's like, I'm in a costume and this costume's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me. So I'm just going to sit here with my weird makeup on and kind of just because he only has one peering kind of look. He only just kind of looks at you. It doesn't feel like he's ever really emoting or doing anything, interesting. It looks like he's just kind of always like, hey, yeah, here's the thing. Here's the stuff. Here's the lines that I've got to deliver. There you go. And we're done. It's like,
well, that's
for
these first two episodes. You're absolutely right. That's how he is. But they start playing around with him, but by the later episodes. Like there's an episode where he's basically Dirty Harry. It's true. Like he's basically Dirty Harry. Then there's another episode where he's a soap opera. Like he's a guy out of a soap opera. Like they are messing around, and they're making him do an awful lot of things that, if he didn't look goofy enough already, he's looking twice as goofy, because now he's a soap opera star.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to my previous point of it being that kind of the greatest American hero sort of thing, where it's just like, all right, we'll have a new little element in here. It's a new thing for Chuck to kind of spread his wings and act and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure homie from Captain America probably felt the exact same way. I was like, ooh, I get to spread my wings and act here. It's like, but do you though?
Well, and that's one of the things that Glenn A. Larson complains about with this show, is that he's like, we gave him too much to do, and there's too much. He had everything in the first episode, to where he can change his car to a helicopter. He can change his car to a plane. Like, that's way too much for the pilot episode. We should have held back on that. And and uh and I think he's right. If a man jumps out of a computer, okay, I'm still with you.
Mm-hmm.
But guy can materialize a car out of nowhere. Sure. Okay, I'm still with you. But then that car can also turn into a helicopter. I'm out.
No helicopter? You don't.
And so, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you really should have, Glenn. And it's cool that you learned later.
Yeah.
But boy, we need to get into Glenn A. Larson, man. So Glenn A. Larson gets interviewed for this 2012 documentary on the making of the series of Automan. And he has on, like, he's totally out of central casting. He's got dyed red hair, like that, like gray orange kind of look going, a tan where it looks so awful. It's not like a George Hamilton style where he looks like he's been baking in the sun forever.
The good old baked potato look. That's my favorite.
He doesn't have that sort of tan. His sort of tan is, I've had to have multiple skin grafts.
Oh no.
And so my skin is different colors on my face. So there's that. He's also wearing a sports leisure suit. Like the kind that like old people wear when they move to Florida. He's got on like a tracksuit kind of.
I'm gonna go running today, and by running I mean walking.
He's got big jewelry on. He's got on tinted glasses and clearly hair plugs. And he looks like the worst human being in the world. He looks awful. Like, he looks like the kind of person that has been screaming at people for 40 years and he just got tired of screaming at people. So now he hires other people to do the screaming for him. That's what he looks like.
He looks like a producer.
And yeah, he's a producer. And it's one of those things where, like, I want to know what Glenn Larson was like on set during the mid 80s. What did that look like? Because it's post Battlestar Galactica. He's had a couple of failures, but he's also had so many hits that he's like untouchable. You know what I mean? So, like, what does that look like when you're on a television set?
It's
got a TV set.
Yeah, he's got to be. Yeah, he's probably a monster at that point. And you're right. After Battlestar Galactica, like, even though that wasn't like, I'm sure the big hit that they actually wanted it to be, a lot of people did like that show back in the day and stuff. So I'm sure that he could always kind of point back to that and just be like, listen, do you know what I gave you? I gave you BJ and the Bear. You need to shut your mouth.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
just that. Yeah, he's definitely one of those dudes. Is when you've got like 60 something, credits to your name and stuff, you're swinging it at that point.
You know what one of those credits are? Nightman.
Oh my God! Well, when you think about it, this doesn't look too far off from Nightman and everything.
It's true.
You know what this show gave me the feeling about, and you mentioned how like some of these shows had this feeling and they were there and they were gone, and like while you're a kid you thought, oh my God, this show. You know what what show this was for me in the mid 90s? Was Viper.
Oh, was it?
That's the equivalent of this show to me. This is like what Viper was to me in the 90s, where it was just like, okay, we got a car. We got a car and it's got all this kind of cool stuff to it and everything. And the Viper was just such a brand new vehicle at that point. And they're like, we're gonna give this car its own television show. And it was, I don't know. It was again, much like I'm sure this show was for you. I remember Viper being awesomely cool. And I'm sure Viper is an absolute turd.
Sure. Yeah. There's no way it's not. It has to be.
because we built it. Hey, we're going to take this Dodge car and we're going to build a whole entire show around it. It's like, is it going to be like Knight Rider? Yes and no. Yes, in as much as it's a car that does stuff. No, in as much as no one's going to watch it. Except for 11-year-old Adam is just like, it's got a cool car in it.
Look at that Viper, so cool.
And like I don't even remember what the Viper car did. I know it did something. What
I
it was,
couldn't tell you.
what
I
it was,
never watched
I don't
a
know.
single second.
Well,
I never watched a single second. I don't know.
You didn't miss much from my bad recollection, where I just go, hey, what is it? Nope, nothing. There's nothing in the tank. But you're right. The big element of this show is the formularity of it all. It's like every single, because even within these 2 episodes, I can tell you almost every episode is going to be like the Ghost Rider 2. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In as much as you remember in Ghost Rider, I think it was Ghost Rider 2, where like him and Sam Elliott are like riding in for that last thing, and like Sam Elliott's the old Ghost Rider and everything, and they're going in for that one final fight there and everything. They travel, they get to the end, and then Sam Elliott's like, "Well, that's as far as I go." This shows that exact same way. She's kind of goes like, "Well, all right, that's all. We're just gonna have to." Y'all figure it out on your own. That's because the Automan just goes, I got all these things. I can fly you in. It feels like Spawn using way too much of his power, because he gets there and he's just like, listen, brother, I'm all tuckered out. I can't do any of this. But you know what? It's going to be good for your story, because then they're going to just, because you can't explain me. You can't explain me. I'm just going to disappear, and then it's all going to be on you. And Desi Arnez Jr. is just like, I guess that's how it's going to roll. It's so bad, but it just feels like that's going to be their thing for every bit. It's like Automan brings you to this point, but then he can't quite complete because there's not enough electricity or some such.
Yeah, and that's always the thing. Beginning is there is a problem. The cops, they're trying to solve it. Desi Arnaz has a pretty good hunch of what it can be. Automan is experiencing something new about human beings that he finds completely captivating.
Oh, how about this? Look at all these crazy things. I'm learning a lot about the world.
The lady who isn't Heather Locklear walks in, and I don't remember, but she knows that Automan is a real thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember how that reveal happened, quite honestly, but she does know that Automan is a real person, and she's like, Automan, what are you doing? That's not the way that goes. And then Cursor does something where you're like, hey, that's borderline sexual harassment. What Cursor just did.
Cursor just looks up, does a little upskirt, and then just kind of like goes, what?
Yeah, just flashes.
Like, you know what he's saying. Hey, that's his network television, damn it.
And then they go find out what's happening with whatever the crime that's happening. Automan does something amazing and then completely shorts out because he doesn't have any more power left. Desi Arnaz then has to cover for that period of time, however long that is. Then Automan recovers. The day is saved. All the credit then goes to the chief. Gets there. He's all mad at Desi Arnez Jr. He's all mad at Desi Arnaz Jr. And all the credit goes to that one detective.
It's so. I feel like this detective would just take that. I think he'd take all the credit. I don't think he would just. I don't think that he would be like, yeah, what are you doing to me? You're giving me credit for stuff I didn't do. I feel like this guy would grab him by the collar and say, and you keep it this way from now on.
Well, what you're forgetting though is that guy, that detective, he isn't a boomer. He's the greatest generation.
Oh yeah, he's an old timer. He's got a little bit of
greatest generation. They wouldn't take credit. They would try not to take credit for things that they didn't do.
Yeah,
but boomers will totally do that.
He's like, I didn't get back from WW2 to have you give me credit for this. For stuff that I didn't actually do. You go in there and tell them the truth. This mystical computer man came out and did all the dirty work.
Right.
It's like,
right. Some swishy guy and like he's from World War II. There's a couple of foreigners, and there's this swishy guy in a blue colored shirt came and solved the crime. Don't you give me that credit. That isn't me.
Nope. You put me in with those ne'er-do-wells, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Freaking hippies. It's like the hippie movement's over, sir. It's been over for about 15 years at this point. You shut up, hippie. Terrible.
I went to a restaurant and there were black people eating with me, and I couldn't believe it. I got so mad.
I had to walk out. I couldn't take it. Gotta go, everybody. It's 1982 and I'm uncomfortable.
What do you mean I can't smoke in the hospital?
Listen, the doctor says if you get a little bit of tar to that baby's lungs at the beginning of its life, then it's kind of prepared for what the onslaught of the 80s will be at that point.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Right into the face of a child. All right, before we get to our final review, we have to find out how this Tron ripoff relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
1000001, Mr. Stallone. Ed Lauder was a character actor that was in every television show and movie from 1968 up until his death in 2013. But I know him best as a government lackey in the movie The Rocketeer. He's the guy Cliff punches in the first act of the movie. But he was truly in everything for 25 years. He was in the Oscar-winning movies The Artist, which is a movie that no one remembers. Born on the 4th of July, which is a movie that people bring up when defending Tom Cruise's acting career. And Seabiscuit, which is a movie I will defend to the death, if for no other reason, it has David McCullough narration. That is a superpower. If you can't get James Earl Jones, you get David McCullough. Sadly, he's dead now. But yes, Ed Lauder, he was on ER, The Office, The A-Team. Seriously, you've seen this guy, even if you don't know his name.
You know the face, 1,000%.
But if you are familiar with him, here's a few things that you might not know about Ed Lauder. He started out as a stand-up comic. Didn't know that. Wow. Besides Burt Reynolds, he's the only actor to appear in both of the Longest Yard movies. Didn't know that. He was in the U.S. Army. Didn't know that, but I could have guessed. He's Elaine Stritch's cousin. Who would have guessed that? Not me.
No.
And he was married 4 times. So in that way, I guess you could say that you both have something in common. He died just before he turned 75, and he did a lot during that time. I always think it's cool when you see someone like this and you can't help but think that guy did a whole lot of living. And that's one thing you can definitely say about Ed Lauder. He was a terrific character actor, like the time he did an episode of Kojak in the 70s, just like you did. There's another thing that you have in common. And just because things work better in threes, the other thing that you both have in common is that you're both not Chinese. And that's your Stallone connection for this week. I hope to hear from you soon. We only have 3 weeks left. Your pal, the Hartford Hellion.
It's funny because he was in an episode of The X-Files, and long time, and what many might consider the best X-Files director, Kim Manners, did directed many an Automan episode.
Oh, hey.
So that I thought that was pretty cool. When I saw his name in there for like under directors and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, you got somebody who at least went on to do some good stuff, back in the day. So that's not too shabby. All right, cool. Here at H&P, we got our own patented Robin rating system. I'll start out here. Automan, had no idea, and honestly thought we'd have a lot more auto in the Automan, but it turns out auto is more like automatic as opposed to, I thought this man was going to be a car. I thought it was going to be a very My Father the Car kind of situation going on. Sadly, that is not this. This is not a man with wheels for hands and feet.
Too bad. He's not a turbo teen.
God, that would have been sweet. Just like all of a sudden he's in there and his hands just turn into wheels and he gets on the ground and just starts frightening. I'll take it though. So knowing nothing going in, I had no expectations outside of I thought perhaps we might have like a man who is a car. We do not get that, but it didn't dissuade my vote here. I'm just going to go. It's a Damian Wayne. It's right in the middle. Here's one of the unfortunate reasons for that is these things are ungodly long. Why is the pilot over an hour and the second episode is 45 minutes, which I thought had to be what the regular runtime would end up being and stuff. So I guess the first one was like a TV event, if you will. It's too freaking long. These should be half-hour episodes, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean they're for children. Yeah. Clearly, this is a show for.
But that also allows a bit of the problem. There is that this is for children, but children aren't going to have the patience to sit and watch this because there ain't enough fun stuff going on. There's not enough special effect, not enough blue glowing lights for the kids in this one. I can tell you that. So yeah, Damian Wayne right in the middle.
As much as I want to give this a Dick Grayson, and I really do, I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
This show is bad. This show doesn't pass the phone test. The people in it, about 80% of them don't want to be there.
No.
The guy playing Automan wants to be there.
No, he's digging it. He's like he's clearly got a role and he's excited to be there. He may not be doing the best job in the world, but he's excited to show up for work every day.
And the lady who's not Heather Locklear, she totally wants to be there as well.
Yeah, she figures she thinks that this is going to be her starting point, her big catalyst.
She does. I think that she missed her calling because she probably should have been like a morning show host. You know, she's so bubbly.
Yeah,
she's so positive, and clearly, like great as that type of character.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Literally everybody else on the show is just going through the motions.
Yeah,
including Glenn A. Larson, the writer.
Every cop and detective all are just like, they're receiving paychecks for this. They're just like, I'm on television. I'm a character actor. This is just kind of what I do. I'm getting that bread. Because outside of like, Desi and Chuck, like I said, most people don't care to be on this program.
Right. So I've got to give it a Damian Wayne. It's a Damian Wayne.
Yeah, it's fair. No, listen, it's fair. It's because like it's not so horrible because the idea there's an inkling of an idea here. I guess that's where the mediocrity of all of it kind of comes, is that there was potential for this to be something that was very cool, something for kids, and like if this were produced by Disney, maybe it would have had a little something like a better through line, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they tend to do more of that stuff than Stephen J. Canal ripoffs would do. But so all of those are available on the YouTubes there, sans a couple of songs that they had to take out that were, I guess, too close to the originals. They were clearly ripoffs, but so close that the Jackson estate was like, hey, pump the brakes on that there, pal.
Yeah, it's true.
We can't be having any of that. So that is it, everybody. We'll talk about what we're doing next week in just a second here. But Sean, the Acolyte is on its way. It's coming.
It is. And the trailer, the final trailer came out for it. Watching it, it's like, hey, this could be great, or this could look like a fan-made video. It could be either one of those things. But we're going to have 30 questions about each episode. And that show starts June 4th, and they're dropping 2 episodes right
off
away.
The bat. That's one of the things, like when they get involved with like a lot of Jedi and stuff like that, that's when it all starts feeling like fan-made stuff to me.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what we've had all over all these years and stuff like that, is like we didn't know a whole bunch about outside like Jedi, outside of the the handful and stuff that we know. So whenever they would go like, oh, here's like previous Jedis or Jedis that we've kind of made up and stuff, it always felt forced and like, no, because none of them were like ever really good actors or anything else like that. They were just buddies that they put into like, the Star Wars fan film and stuff. So those always suffered. So hopefully we'll have some, high quality actors within this. I think Disney at least has a better budget for it. So we'll check out The Acolyte when that drops.
The most fan films are usually fat guy in brown robe, running around through the woods,
doing a lot of force pushing and
a lot of force pushing. Exactly.
A lot of just swinging around and stuff. I saw a video, just a quick tangent. I saw a video of what the times they are changing. There was a high school talent show, and this kid's talent was spinning around a lightsaber.
Wow.
He wasn't bad at it. I'll give the kid credit where credit is due. Kid could twirl like an MF. You like unreal. But at the same time, too, I'm only sitting there thinking of like, I don't care how good you are. If you were doing that when I was in high school,
man,
dead. Just dead. You wouldn't live. You wouldn't live to see the next day, because your entire life would have just been taken from you, from just everyone just dogging you forever and a day. You'd never come back from it. You'd be the Star Wars kid.
I knew when I knew things had changed when my oldest daughter, with no shame at all, was wearing a Doctor Who TARDIS toboggan hat
Oh, yeah. Wow.
to school. And I was like, man, that I'd have been murdered.
That'll get you a straight whooping where I come from, boy.
It's true.
You don't play around in those things, man. So, but join us back here for all of those fun things over at our 30 Questions show. That's ultimately what we're saying here. Next week, we're jumping back in, as we say, as we wind it down here and everything. We're coming with some classics. Believe it or not, over the 8 years that we have been doing this show, I don't think, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if you go through the HMP archives, I'm too lazy to do it, but I don't think we've ever talked anything specifically Super Friends from back in the day. We've done some offshoots, maybe a little special or something, but never like any actual episodes and stuff. So we're checking out 2 episodes that they mentioned over at CBR and everything. So if these all suck, we got CBR to blame for that one.
The 2 highest rated episodes according to CBR, which is The Brainchild / The Case of Stolen Powers, and then History of Doom.
Which honestly, when I read the plot for History of Doom, it actually sounded like way more impressive than anything of this era. So I'm really interested to see how that one actually pans out, because you're like, oh, this might be interesting. But then you realize when it was made and you're like, probably not, though. But that's what's going to be fun about it. We're going to check all that out. Bruce should be back next week here and everything. The man is a father, and he's only got so many years with his children. You let him enjoy that, damn it. As we
you get 18 summers with your kids.
Take them while you can, baby. So we always are happy to let him kind of do that in here and everything. And so he'll be back next week when we're talking Super Friends. For the absent Bruce Leslie, the Hartford Hellion, Sweet Shanta Kovacs from the internet, I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.